Welcome to another podcast. This is Angelo here, founder of the Big Gay Family social program, where over the past 11 years, I've been helping gay men create beautiful relationships and connect in beautiful ways. If you're not part of the Big Gay Family, please join us. We are not going to betray you the same way that the LGBT community betrayed you. We're not going to betray you. We're going to enhance you. We're going to accelerate your psychological development. We're going to accelerate the enhancing of your gay identity. And through the interactions and through the social pathways inside the program, you can literally discover things that you thought were impossible. I work as a social engineer inside the program, and I'm constantly upgrading it. So the 2021 version of the program has the Gay Puritan module, it has the military module, and it has social contracts, and an extraordinary depth and richness in terms of philosophy, in terms of opportunities for the rite of passage, for men to become men. So this is the richest experience you can ever have in terms of you living a gay life. So I hope you join us, and to do that, visit biggayfamily.com. So now I want to talk to you about a topic that is all in front of us, but nobody wants to call it out, or very few people have the courage to call it out. And that's the topic of mental illness. What is mental illness? How should we look at it? Do you have it? Do other gay men have it? How do you know whether they have it or not? So we're going to talk about some very street level ideas about how to understand mental illnesses today in the world, especially in the gay world. And these street level ideas are not going to be psychologized to a degree that is going to be complicated. I'm going to just straight up tell you how to find out if someone has a mental illness and what that means and what you should do about it. So right off the bat, this situation is going to be helpful when you see a beautiful man with designer genitalia. You're going to be going crazy over him, but at that moment, you're going to have to ask the question, does he have a mental illness? Or is he going to love me? And this is a very important question because I see so many men, and myself included, I've done it twice. I went for guys that were my sexual type, the hairy, bearish guys with thick dicks. And so I went for it, and I paid the price like everybody else. So it took me a while to understand that there is a need to check whether these men are capable of loving you. So it doesn't matter they're going to be your beautiful, sexy guys. It really doesn't matter. Because if they have mental illness, they're going to take your self-esteem away. They're going to devalue it. Or they're going to devalue you. So the fastest way to tell if there's mental illness involved is if you feel devalued on some level by the other person. You have a conversation, and then you notice that there's something that has to happen, but it's not happening, and you feel devalued. The sensation of being devalued is actually a sensation that you can feel. Now, it takes courage to call it out, to actually not just feel that you are being devalued, but also to actually say, hey, I'm being devalued here. What's going on here? And then calling it out. So the devaluing is one of the key signs that there is something fishy going on. Now, calling it a mental illness, some people might say, oh wow, you're taking this too far. I guess then everybody is mentally ill. Well, we want to then check in with the standard. What is the standard that we need to have for healthy human interactions? And this is going to help you understand why we need to use bigger words today, like mental illness, as opposed to just being, ambivalent about it, because everybody's now violating the standard and nobody has relationships. So we need to introduce some kind of intervention here. So an intervention in the gay world is necessary. Otherwise, this is going to continue. So what's the big deal about the concept of devaluing people? Because this is the foundational, you can say, requirement for everything that we do with each other. If people devalue each other, nothing is possible. And you have to call it a mental illness because people are no longer functioning in a social space. They devalue each other, and by devaluing each other, they create a cycle of hurt, a cycle of trauma. People are so easygoing about this concept, and they forget that when they get devalued, that devaluation takes their self-esteem away from them, and it reduces their ability to be confident and to basically be in the world in a powerful way. So paying attention to this will help you transform your life. And those men who don't pay attention to this will continue being devalued, will continue being reduced to their penises, to sexual acts, and their self-worth will be connected and anchored in those reductionary forces. That at a certain moment, these men are going to lose their connection to the universe. They're going to lose their connection to things that are much more important, and instead they're going to be paying attention to the trivial, devalued ways of living, meaning that they no longer live in their full sense of self-worth. They live in a basement, as if they were locked in the basement and sexually abused, and that's all they know. And their value has been connected to that sexual abuse. And the trauma from it creates trauma bonding. And from that moment on, they love being devalued, and they love, then later, devaluing others. So all of this is mental illness, and all of this is happening in the gay world most of the time, if not at all times. Because the gay world has been under the process of devaluing over the past 40 years. All of us have been basically destroyed. Our sense of self-worth, our sense of spiritual direction, our connection with God, our connection to each other. There's a reason why all of it is not working. It's because we were devalued first, and then we devalue each other. So this is basically how shame works. It's a process of devaluing. And if you have the courage to feel it, you'll notice that most of the interactions with other gay men will give you this sensation of something is always taken from you. You're always leaving some part of you behind, that you have to abandon some part of you to fit in. You have to remove your mind in order to participate with people. And so these devaluing processes eventually strip a man from all of his power. And this doesn't happen overnight. This happens across the span of a few weeks, months, maybe sometimes a few years. And in the gay world, a lot of this devaluing is under the pretext of comedy, under the pretext of having fun, under the pretext of tolerance, tolerating people that are showcasing self-destructive behaviors, and these self-destructive behaviors are imprinted into all of us, and then everybody is self-destructing. So this is important to call out. This is important for you to become aware about, because we are tolerating ideas, we are tolerating people that devalue us indirectly, and we just wake up a year or two later and we don't have any sense of self-worth. We don't feel like we have any value. It's because all the people around us that we allowed to enter into our private spaces, these people are behaving in self-destructive ways, and they want to bring that self-destruction to you. So that's how indirectly you're being devalued. Remember, it's not like somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to devalue you today. Hey, I want to take your self-worth from you today. That's not how it works. It works on a more assumptive layer. So for example, let's say that you hook up with somebody and then you have sex, but for whatever reason, you can't get a hard-on. And you know you can't get a hard-on because there's something about this person that doesn't feel right. So your arousal is not activated because you don't feel safe. And then that person begins to judge you and say, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? What can I do to get you hard? And now there's this whole new direction that the sexual activity is taking. Now you are being literally devalued. He is devaluing you because he's not curious about what he has done to make you feel uncomfortable so that your body is basically shutting down. He doesn't want to know about what's happening in your psychology. He doesn't want to know why you're losing the arousal. All he wants to do is to reduce you to the penis, to get you as hard as possible, and to basically use your penis for his purposes. And so this is how the devaluing process works in sexuality. Whenever you are asked to perform, whenever you are turned into an object of entertainment for somebody else, and your human feelings and your human sensations and your observations and your behaviors are no longer relevant to the other person, that's how you know you're being devalued. And after that situation, your sense of self-worth will be reduced, because that's how it works. And eventually, if you allow this to happen hundreds of times, one day you're going to feel depressed and anxious, and you won't even know why. It's because all these situations gradually took your sense of powerful identity away from you. And when you lose your power this way, you eventually will notice that there's nothing that drives you. There's nothing beautiful that leads you forward, because you were reduced to all the tribal, you were reduced to all the primitive. And in those spaces, your ability to discover yourself is very limited. Your ability to discover who you are is extremely limited. And so you don't know who you are because everybody's devaluing you. And in that devaluation, it's not like in that devaluation you're going to find yourself. No, you are being squeezed. You're being pushed into a corner in a cave. Often in those situations, you'll notice that depression and anxieties are common. Not because these anxieties are wrong. No, these anxieties are saying to you, hey, watch out, you're being devalued. This is not you. Pay attention. Stop what you're doing, because whatever you're doing is killing you, is self-destructing you, is creating a leakage of spiritual energy, not enhancement. And so you need to turn around and begin to re-enhance and rebuild your identity, reclaim your sense of worth. And the only way you can do it is by first rejecting the people and the ideas that took it from you. And using the word mental illness is a good way to give yourself the power to call it out. To not assume that people are just people and everybody is loving and caring. No, that's not going to get you anywhere. That's not true, first of all. And society is damaged. Most of society is damaged beyond repair. And you have to remember that most people, they can't afford psychologists. They can't afford coaches. They can't afford therapists. So whatever has been done to them is going to be integrated deeper and deeper into their psychic. Deeper and deeper. It used to be that people had families. It used to be that people had best friends. None of that is now present. So people don't have a way of healing themselves. People don't have a way of fixing their own biases. So most people today are in the spiral of self-destruction. And the concept of mental illness is going to be more and more common, is going to be more and more in your face. Basically, people behaving in ways that are so crazy, that are so irrational, that very few people will ever have pleasant experiences with other people. And understanding the concept of mental illness is going to help you, because you are going to recognize that mental illness is everywhere, and that the sensations of being devalued is just one way of noticing how these mental illnesses are present in your life. And this is the street level, the fastest way to tell, am I in a mentally ill environment or am I in a healthy environment? If you feel devalued, you need to get out and you need to stop interaction with that person. And instead, you need to ascend. You need to reclaim a higher level identity. You need to constantly, for the rest of your life, keep upgrading your self-understanding and your self-discovery process. You always want to build up a higher level of self-perception that comes from ascension. That will never come from devaluing. So that's why this is a big deal. That's why I've chosen to talk to you about mental illness from the perspective of devaluing, because this is the most common theme that you see today. You meet someone, you want to connect to someone, but then your intentions are devalued. Your emotional energy is irrelevant. The intention to settle down, to connect with someone is not relevant. So ambivalence, indifference that often come from shame and trauma will create this devaluing process everywhere around you. So you need to pay attention to this. I personally, my strategy, I block people immediately. When I see someone has a devaluing process inside their life and they devalue me by way of ambivalence about my feelings, ambivalence about the process of the connection, where there is this indifference, I immediately block that person and I never speak to that person again, because it means that there are deeper breakdowns of that person's psychology, that if they give themselves permission to devalue you in such a silly kind of way at the beginning when you meet them, then you know they simply lack the capacity for love and they're incapable of entering into their loving presence themselves. In general, people that are unfinished psychologically, so this means people that are confused about their identity, so that means all the drag queens, all the transsexuals, closeted men, bisexuals, all the people that are living outside of the structure of masculinity or femininity embodied in a male or female persona and congruently interconnected, if they operate outside of that, they have devalued themselves structurally. In other words, the composition of their identity and the makeup of their psychic is already operating in a corrupted way. They have devalued themselves. And what will happen is that then they will teach everybody around them that devaluing experience. They will devalue everybody else in their lives. Because if you devalue yourself by living through self-deception, by living through principles that are not with integrity with other people, so this means, for example, men that are closeted, okay? So when they are with women and they are not telling the women the truth about who they are, they have devalued themselves, they devalue the women, and then when they come out of the closet, they still carry with themselves those devaluing patterns. They will devalue everybody. And so that's why they do need the coaches, they do need the psychologist to undo all the devaluing patterns. A very common theme shows up with bisexual men in terms of devaluing gay men. They love gay men for sex, but when a gay man wants to emotionally connect to a bisexual man, the bisexual man is completely lost. He doesn't want that. He does not know how to deal with it. And so even though that he may not be fully aware exactly that he's devaluing the gay man, the devaluing process is happening, even though both people are innocently in it. So just by being innocently ignorant does not create an exemption in the hurt and in the trauma that occurs. And so this is very difficult for teenagers these days and for younger men in their 20s to experience, because it must be very tough. I remember when I was in my early 20s, the devaluing velocity, you can say, was not as pronounced as it is today. And today, most people get devalued immediately because mental illness and human unfinishing is the norm today. Most people don't grow up in such a way that their psychological stages are completed. They don't grow up into their full maturity and strength of their masculinity or their ambition, drive, their personality that takes them to the next level. There's always something missing. There's always something unfinished. And to have that finishing completed in their way that they do it, the way they go about it, they devalue others to build themselves up. Okay? So this is very common. They will devalue you to build themselves up. A guy is going to reject you so that you don't reject him later. And so these complexities, these devaluing processes are present everywhere today in society. And the reason why they're present is because nobody cares. That's really why. In the world where everybody can do whatever they want to do, in a world where everybody is a free agent, because that's what people are these days, they're not bound by any community ethics. They're not bound by any family requirements to be a good person. They're not bound by any of these standards. So people devalue each other right and left. Right and left. And especially the people that are confused because they have devalued themselves and then they're going to continue devaluing everybody around them. And so if you are still hooking up, if you're still on Grindr, basically you're going to be exposed to mental illness. Mental illness all the time for the rest of your life. It's not going to get any easier. It's going to get worse and worse and worse because these people don't have access to psychologists. They don't have access to proper psychological care. They don't know what they're doing. They're ignorantly and innocently devaluing you while they want to love you. So the perversion of this whole situation is such that they think they love you. They think they're dating you. But in reality, they are devaluing you and they are pushing you away. So this is, my friends, a state of mental illness in society where people are ambivalent, people are indifferent, people are in a state of incapacitation such that nothing beautiful can come from that, such that the effort and the motivation to step up and to love someone because of their character, because of their beautiful spirituality, that doesn't happen anymore. Because those experiences require adding value. Those experiences require enhancing someone's value. And I don't know if many gay men know how to do that or are even capable of doing it. Because the culture and the shame and the trauma takes all the value from all of us every day through the deception, through the lies, through the psychological warfare, through all kinds of complex mechanisms that are not directly perceived, that we have been stepped on by our own communities, by our own leaders. We can't see it directly, but you can feel it. And in my videos, in my podcast, I ask people to listen and trust to their hearts. Listen and trust your heart. Listen to your heart. Trust your heart. You are being devalued, and you know you are. You just have no courage to call it out because you are seeing that you are being destroyed by your own people. You're being killed by your own people. You're being raptured by your own people. And this is not something nice. And yet we have to call it out. Otherwise, you're going to perish like all these other people who find themselves completely lost on all kinds of medications and just living their lives on Grindr. I hope you don't want that kind of life, and I hope that you take all the things I'm saying to you very seriously, because we don't have the luxury of indifference anymore. Everything matters. Everything is important. Your life is at stake, and you don't live 500 years. You probably, if you're in your 40s, which most of the people are who are watching and listening to my podcast, if you're somewhere from 40 to say 50, you probably have 20 years of a real amazing life left. And in those 20 years, if you're being devalued, if you surround yourself with people that have mental illness, those 20 years will be taken from you. Those moments of your prime experience of life will be raptured. And you're going to be seeing psychologists, you're going to be seeing therapists as opposed to living your life. All because, frankly, you were naive that the devaluing process is not happening. You were naive that you didn't know that people have mental illnesses. You did not know that people come in all kinds of differences of psychological development. And if they're unfinished, they're going to use you and take your value and finish themselves or complete themselves psychologically. So understanding all of this will give you a space of freedom, will give you a space of relaxation and peace of mind. You have to have this hygiene in your psychic. You have to have these boundaries. You don't want to be around mentally ill people who devalue you, whether through sex, whether through their lies, through their pretense, whether through just by virtue of being part of the gay community, that you trust them with everything all your life. You don't want to do that. You want to think on your feet. You want to think clearly. You want to listen to your heart. And you want to call it out when you're devalued, when someone wants to hurt you, when someone wants to take something from you. You always want to make a huge deal about it. And that's how you get stronger. And that's how you reclaim your value back. And that's how you eventually stop being around mentally ill people and you join a professional program like the Big Gay Family Social Program, and you notice the difference. You live in a world where you're no longer devalued. You are enhanced. You ascend for the first time in your life. So please take this very seriously. Everybody inside themselves has a sense of value. You have a sense of self-perception that is affected by your sense of self-worth. And we need to lift it to the highest ground we can and keep lifting it forever. This doesn't just end with your decision to hire a shrink. No, this is forever. Because in this culture that we live in today, we are all under attack by people that will devalue you, and they don't even know that they're doing it. So it is your responsibility to understand this, to call it out, and simply step outside of it and live your life 100% outside of it and forever. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that these ideas I'm sharing with you are going to help you see that there is hope, there is good news, but before all of that, we have to understand how we have been stepped on and sabotaged and destroyed by our own people. And we need to stop that. And once you stop it, then some of us who eventually will regain our strength, we can finally create the loving relationships and the loving communities that we struggled all these years to create. Now we are no longer victims to our own ignorance. Now we are no longer passive about what needs to be done. We are no longer naive about what hurts us. And imagine the transformation that happens when you are no longer being hurt, devalued, rejected, abandoned, judged, and trivialized. We can live our dreams. We can love with our hearts. We just need the right place to do this. We just need the right community that makes that possible. And here we are. We've made it possible already. It's waiting for you when you are ready to give yourself all the self-worth that has been lost over the past decades of interactions with gay men. Now you can give it all back to yourself and live an empowered life. So my friends, join us at the Big Gay Family Social Program. Visit the website biggayfamily.com. And until we talk in the next podcast, love for love, honor for honor. I will fight for you when you fight for me. And that's our social contract. Okay, my friends, I'll see you soon.